Welcome to my channel. Today, we are going to learn English through a famous historical mystery. We are going to discover the strange story of the lost colony of Roanoke. More than 400 years ago, a group of English families sailed across the wide ocean. They wanted to build a new life in America. But then, they completely disappeared. What happened to them? Where did they go? Listen very carefully to the story to improve your English listening skills and learn new words. The Brave Dreamers. Long ago, in the year 1587, a big ship sailed away from the green docks of England. On this beautiful ship, there were over 100 brave men, women, and little children. They were very excited because they were sailing to a mysterious new land called America. They wanted to build a permanent town, cut down tall trees, plant fresh green crops, and call this new place their home. The leader of these brave people was a smart man named John White. He was an artist who could draw beautiful maps and clear pictures of the animals and plants they found. After many long weeks on the dark ocean, the group finally arrived at a small island called Roanoke Island. The island was full of tall, wild trees and surrounded by deep blue water. Remember, this was a wild place with no big roads, no comfortable houses, and no stores to buy fresh food. The people had to work very hard from morning until night to build small wooden houses. Soon, something wonderful happened that made everyone very happy. John White's daughter gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl. They named her Virginia Dare, and she was the very first English baby born in America. However, their happy days did not last very long. It was the winter that was coming fast, and the colonists soon realized they did not have enough food to eat. They were afraid they would starve in the cold weather. The people looked at John White with sad, tired eyes and asked him to do something difficult. They asked him to sail all the way back to England to get more food, heavy tools, and clothes. John White did not want to leave his family and his sweet new granddaughter behind. But he knew that if he did not go, everyone on the island might die. Before he walked onto the ship, he made a very important plan with the people. He told them, "If you must leave this island because of danger, you must carve the name of your new location on a tree." He also added, "If you are in great danger, you must carve a big cross above the name." John White said goodbye, stepped onto the dark ship, and watched the small island disappear into the gray fog.
Trapped by war. The journey across the ocean back to England was very long, rough, and dangerous. When John White finally arrived in England, he was tired, but he wanted to help his family immediately. However, he found a very big problem waiting for him at home. England was starting a massive, dangerous war with a powerful country called Spain. The Queen of England ordered that every single ship, big or small, must stay at home to fight the Spanish Navy. No ships were allowed to travel across the wide ocean to America. John White begged the captains and officials for help, but everyone said no because the war was too important. Weeks turned into months, and months slowly turned into long, painful years. John White sat by the window every day, looking at the gray sea, feeling deeply worried about his daughter and his little granddaughter. Were they safe? Did they have enough corn to eat? Were they cold? Frustrated, John White wanted to fly across the water, but he was completely trapped in England by the terrible war. Finally, after 3 long years, the war ended and John White was allowed to hire a ship. He quickly collected heavy bags of food, sharp tools, and seeds to take to his family. The ship sailed as fast as it could back across the blue Atlantic Ocean. As the ship came close to the shores of Roanoke Island, John White stood at the front, looking through the sea mist. It was late in the evening, and the sky was turning dark. Suddenly, someone on the ship shouted because they saw a small plume of smoke rising from the island trees. John White's heart jumped with great joy. He thought the smoke meant his family was cooking dinner and waiting happily for his return. He told the sailors to blow a trumpet and sing English songs loudly across the dark water. But as the loud music echoed through the dark woods, nobody answered. The beach was completely dark, quiet, and cold.
The empty fortress. The next morning, as soon as the yellow sun came up, John White jumped into a small boat. He and a few armed sailors rowed quickly to the sandy beach of Roanoke Island. They stepped onto the shore, but something felt very wrong because the air was completely silent. Where were the children playing? Where were the busy people working? They walked quickly through the thick bushes toward the area where the houses stood. When they arrived, they stopped and stared in total disbelief. The village was completely empty, and all the neat wooden houses were gone. The houses had been taken down, and a high wall made of heavy tree trunks had been built around the area, like a fort. It looked like a fortress, but there were no soldiers inside and no smoke coming from any chimneys. John White ran through the open gate, calling out the names of his daughter and his granddaughter. Only the cold wind answered him through the tall grass. He began to search the ground carefully for clues. He found some old, heavy books with their covers ruined by the rain, and some rusted iron tools covered in dark dirt. It looked like the people had packed up their most valuable things and left calmly, without running away in fear. There were no signs of a big battle, no broken weapons, and no bodies on the ground. John White remembered the secret plan he made 3 years ago. He ran to the entrance of the fort and looked closely at the heavy wooden posts. On one of the main posts, someone had carefully carved letters into the bark. The letters spelled out the word Croatoan. John White stared at the word, his mind racing to understand what it meant. Was this the name of a place? Was it a message from his lost family? He looked closely above the carved letters to see if there was a cross. There was no cross carved anywhere on the wood, which meant the people did not leave in a situation of extreme danger or terror.
The mystery of Croatoan. John White knew that Croatoan was the name of a nearby island located further down the coast. It was also the name of a friendly group of Native Americans who lived on that island. The leader of this group was a kind man named Manteo, who had traveled to England before and was a good friend to the English people. John White felt a sudden spark of hope in his heavy heart. He thought, my family must have run out of food, and their good friends took them to the neighbor island to keep them safe. He ran back to the beach and told the ship captain, we must sail south immediately to Croatoan Island. But the ocean is a wild and dangerous thing. Suddenly, the bright sky turned dark gray, and a terrible storm began to blow across the water. The wind roared, and giant waves crashed against the wooden ship, breaking the heavy anchor chains. The ship was being pushed toward dangerous shallow rocks, and the water was leaking inside.
The captain came to John White with a very serious face and said they could not sail south in this storm. They were losing their fresh drinking water and the ship was too damaged to survive. The captain ordered the crew to sail away from the dangerous coast, back toward the deep ocean. John White cried and begged the captain to stay, but the ship was forced to sail all the way back to Europe. John White never found enough money to buy another ship, and he never saw his beloved family again. For hundreds of years, nobody knew what happened to those men, women, and children. Did they stay on the island? Did they move away? In history, they became famous as the lost colony of Roanoke. Many people have tried to solve this grand puzzle, creating different theories over the years. Let us look closely at the clues to see what modern science says about this dark mystery. Secrets in the dirt. Many years passed, and modern scientists and historians decided to look for the lost people using new technology. They went back to Roanoke Island and the areas around it with sharp shovels and special metal detectors. They dug deep into the dark earth, looking for things that the English people might have dropped or left behind. Recently, an expert archaeologist found some very interesting things hidden deep under the dirt. They found small pieces of English pottery, an expensive gold ring, and parts of old iron guns. These things were not found on Roanoke Island, but at a special place called Site X, located further inland near a river. Why would the colonists move away from the ocean and travel deep into the woods? Scientists discovered that during the years 1587 to 1589, America suffered from a terrible environmental disaster. By looking at the rings inside very old trees, they learned there was a massive drought, which means no rain fell for a very long time. The ground became dry like dust, the plants died, and there was no clean water to drink. Roanoke Island was a small place with very little fresh water. If the colonists stayed there during the Great Drought, they would have died of thirst. So it makes perfect sense that they had to leave the dry island to find a big river with fresh water. They probably broke into smaller groups to survive better. Some went to live with the friendly Native Americans on Croatoan Island, while others traveled inland to plant corn near the rivers. Remember, they were not destroyed by an enemy. They simply became part of the new land to survive. They built new lives, mixed with the local tribes, and slowly forgot their old English ways over time. The pieces of the puzzle. Over the years, many travelers reported seeing very unusual things in the forests of America. Some explorers met Native American children who had beautiful blue eyes and light brown hair instead of dark features. These children also spoke some words that sounded very much like Old English. This suggests that the Roanoke colonists lived together with the native people, married them, and raised families together. The mystery of Roanoke is not a scary story about a ghost or a magical disappearance. It is a real story about brave human beings who had to make difficult choices during a time of great trouble and hunger. Today, visitors can still go to Roanoke Island and walk through the quiet woods where John White once walked. You can see the tall trees and look at the blue water, imagining the small baby Virginia Dare sleeping in her wooden cradle. When you think about history, remember that clues can be hidden in the simplest words carved on a tree. Now you know the true story of the lost colony, and you have practiced your English listening skills at the same time. Learning history through stories is a wonderful way to build your vocabulary and understand the world better. Make sure to practice the new words you heard today, like colony, drought, and fortress. Thank you so much for listening to this history lesson today. If you liked this story and want to learn more English with me, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. See you next time, and keep practicing your English every single day.